Hello and welcome to a tutorial. So in this tutorial, I will show you how to ban a user from using the website if they try 3 or 4 times to log in. The number of times is up to you to decide when you can ban someone, but maybe 10 would be good, or even 20 would be good. So the thing is, in order to ban somebody, we have to be able to know what their IP address is. So in PHP, we can do that using the server to know what their IP address is. Okay, so let me come here and show you the variables that are required. We'll look at these two here, but let me explain a little bit why you would want to ban somebody's IP. Now, usually the standard is to ban someone from, if let's say they want to log in and they do maybe 3 or 4 tries, and then what you would do is you decide to lock their account for a period of time. Now, the only problem with this is, let's say you're running a website that has, maybe it's a betting website, or it's a betting or auction, for example. So those are time-sensitive websites where somebody is required to either log in quickly and make a bet or something like that. So what I would do if I have an opponent that I know will get the item that I want, but I don't want them to, all I need to do is go to just find out what their email address is, because they'll think, okay, this is not too sensitive. So I may know their email address, and then I'm just going to do 3 tries on that website. And once I try 3 times, then their account is locked, and then they can't bet anymore. So then I get the advantage and I can bet. So this is one form of hacking which we can easily prevent. So instead of you banning the account, it would be better to ban the IP address, because then they will ban themselves out of the entire website. Okay, and also the reason why you don't want to do this in 3 tries, you may want to do it with 10 or 20 even. The reason is that if somebody is trying to get you locked out, they will try a lot of times, right? But if somebody is genuinely trying to log in, by the 4th or 5th try, even if they forgot their password, they might be able to log in. But these guys that try to get you banned on a website will use bots, for example, sometimes, and these bots will send several requests to your page. Maybe 20 per minute is too low, so they may send thousands of them in 2 or 3 minutes. So I think 20 is not unreasonable, or 10. At least you know this is a bot and this is not a real human being. Then you can ban, because you don't want to inconvenience your actual users. Okay, so that is a disclaimer there. Now, having to ban someone for, let's say somebody is trying to use a bot to load your system, your website, and hack it that way. Just banning them for 5 minutes is a lot of time, because then their computer will have to wait for 5 minutes, keep trying, and then it will continue just like that. So a hacking system that's supposed to take maybe 10 minutes to complete, if you add another 5 minutes to every try, then you're going to increase that a lot, because out of maybe 20,000 tries it has to do in order to get the right password or login details, you set it back. That 5 minutes by 10,000 is a lot of time. So you may set it back a couple of years, or 4 years or 5 years, which is really good. So my point here is that don't be too quick to ban people. They might need your services and they might just leave your website and you lose customers. So just make sure the number is large enough before you try to ban someone. Okay, so with that in mind, let's see how we can get the information of somebody's IP. So here, let's just create a simple page. So make sure that you have your server running. Here I'm using XAMPP as usual. So make sure XAMPP, Apache and MySQL are both running once you install XAMPP if you don't have it. open the control panel and start these two. Okay, so once you're done with that, you can go to the htdocs folder, and that is czamp htdocs, and then create a folder called IP, and then in here you can create a file. So instead of creating it here, I will just drag the folder into my text editor, which is Sublime Text. That way I can just right click here and create a new file, which I will save in that same folder and call this index.php. So this file will represent an existing website, because you may want to add this to an existing website. Then of course I'm going to right click on the folder again, and this time I will save a login page, so login.php. Okay, and then finally I right click and a new file. Now this file will contain the function that we want, so ban.php, that's what we call it. You can call it anything you want really. So at least now we have a representation of what might be an existing website. So index will represent any page on your website where you want to check if somebody was banned or not, so they don't have access. So index will represent that. Ban will be the actual code that we're going to use, and then login will represent our login page, because we need to do 3 tries before we can ban someone. So let's try and create our login page. So I'm just going to type HTML here and say login, so that we can begin to do something useful here. So h1 login, like that, so that we have a title of some kind, and then I want to create a form which I am going to use for the login. So an input of type text, and I'm going to give it a name. This will be the email. This will be the email, let's say, or username, for example. Let's just use email for now. So email, and then we need a placeholder. So the placeholder is going to be, let's see here, email as well. Okay, something like that. So now let me put a break tag here so that we can go to the next. Let me duplicate this once, and then put a second break tag here, and then finally put a submit button. So this will also be an input, or we can just say button, like that. Let's say login, like so. Okay, so let's make sure our method here is post, so we can actually use this to post. So email, and then here password, like so. Okay, name, password. So we have email, we have password. Now usually this part here will be hidden, so we'll use password there. Okay, great. You can use email here if you want, that's okay. So I'm going to save this. This is our login page, so save that. That is good. And then I want to be able to go to my okay, the index page here, login page. Okay, so we will now import the ban.php. So at the very top here, don't leave any spaces, put your PHP tags like that. Okay, and then let's include a file. In fact, let's just say require, like so. So we require that file called ban.php, like that. And then how I want this to run is I just want to have a function in here. So I will require the file somehow, and then have a function called check if banned. You can name it anything that you want, like so. It's just a function there, and then let's go in ban.php, put our PHP tags like so, and then put function check if banned, like so. Okay, so the name doesn't really matter. Now this function would bring actually, you can decide if you want this function to return true or false, so that you can try and do other things. But for now, our function will just redirect the user to a banned page. So here, I'm just going to right click again and create a new file, and save this one. We'll just call this one denied.php and save that. So the whole purpose of this file is just so we can redirect people who have access denied on our website. So H1 here, I'll just say access denied, like so, with exclamation points like that. Okay, great. So let's go back to our browser here and load those files. So make sure those are running, as I said, the server and MySQL. And then here, what we're going to do is type localhost/IP or whatever folder you used /index.php. So refresh. And of course, the index page is empty, but let's go to the login page. So say login.php. And this is our login page right here. Nice and simple. And then if we go to the bund, let's go bund.php. What is wrong? Oh, it's not bund, it's denied. Sorry, I forgot that. So denied.php, and then you get access denied. Okay, so everything is set. Now all we need to do is figure out how to get somebody's IP. So let's do a bit of some experimentation here. Let's go to the index page itself and let's add some PHP tags. So I want you to understand how the IP address is got. So let's do server. We're going to use the server variable because this contains information about the server itself. So I'm going to do print readable, like so, print r server. And then here I will echo some pre-tags because this is an array and I want it to look more orderly. So here, I'll come back here and do index.php again. And there we go. So you see this information is coming from the server itself. So it's contained in that variable, which is an array, and it contains all this. So if we look closely here, you're going to see something that resembles an IP address like this one, 127.0.1.0.1. And it's inside server address, but this is the address of the particular server that we're using. So this will be the address of our website. Then there's this one, remote address. This one shows you the IP address of the remote, the client in this case. So this is what we're going to use. So this is why I had listed this one here. You can see that remote address there. But then sometimes someone is using a proxy and you might not find the IP address here. It might be masked, so it will be in this variable instead. So if I copy this and come back to my browser, Control F, paste, you'll see that it's not found here. It's not part of this list. That's because the information being displayed by my server here is limited. So instead, we're going to test this online so that I can show you how it works. Now, keep in mind that somebody can easily change their IP address. It's very, very simple to change. So it's not a reliable way to know exactly where the person is at all. However, regardless, if they try with a different IP address and they try 3 times, you can still ban that address as well. They may try the next one, you just continue the process because the website is automatic. It's just going to check how many times has this person tried to log in and then they are banned. So whether they use 1,000 IP addresses, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so with this information here, let me show you how somebody can easily mask their IP. It's not even very difficult. It's not difficult at all. It's just effortless. So what we can do is I opened an account with 000 web host. It's a free hosting service. You can give it a try. Just create an account and you get 1 free website. So in my case, I have 1 free website. So once you're on the dashboard, just while you're on the dashboard, just click on File Browser so that you are taken to the file browser. It'll bring you to this page I was just here on, and then you can click Upload Files here. So this is the dashboard, and then you click on File Manager, then click on Upload Files. That will take you to the file manager, which looks something like this. So go to the public HTML folder here. So the reason we're doing all this, I just want to show you if our website is online, how it perceives my IP address. This is why we're putting a page online here. So in this public HTML, just replace the index.php here and click, you can create a new file, just delete whatever you find here and then click edit to edit the file. So create index.php and click edit. So it seems it's asking me to log in. Let me just click that again. I think I had moved away for a while there. Okay, so loading. Now as it loads, the code that we want to add in here is what we have on our index page. However, I want to add a second param here. I'm just going to say get or headers, because the headers do contain IP addresses as well. So I'm just going to say print r like that as well. Print readable, same thing as the top. So just keep in mind that the top part has the server information, the bottom has the headers. Okay, so I will copy everything in here, very simple code. Come back here and open the public HTML, and let's load our index page here and edit it for a minute. So my index page is empty, still loading though, even though it is empty. I will click in there and paste the data and then hit save. Okay, so you can save and close if you want. That's entirely up to you, but that's okay. Then if you come back here, you can right click on view site, right click, open in a new tab so that we open the site itself. So which is this in my case. Then now if I refresh my page, we will see some interesting data here. So as you can see, there is absolutely more data here, because now we can see this variable that we couldn't find there, httpx forwarded 4. It wasn't there on our localhost, but it is here now. So you see, that's that right there. So here it says httpx real IP, so you can get that, or you can say forwarded 4, you can get that as well. Now you can see in my case it's the same number. Okay, so this is all from the server, and there's also this as well, remote address, which we are using currently here. So yeah, that is part of it. And now this right here is the headers information, and so you can see here it says x forwarded 4 still contains the same IP address as x real IP as well. Now keep in mind, this information can be manipulated, as I will show just now. So what I'll do is I'll copy this IP address and bring it over here and paste it. And then I will go back over here. And what I will do is just open a VPN here and just select any country that I want. So I'm just going to say Germany, and it's going to take a second, and I'm connected to Germany. So now if I try to refresh the page like so to see my IP, you'll see that the IP is completely different now. So copy that, come back here and paste that. So look at that, very different IP address altogether. So if this one is banned, I can easily go back here and just change the country that I want to be in. It's as simple as that. Just a click of a mouse and I can change my IP address. So it's just to show you that changing IPs is very simple. So use this information however you please. All right, so now that we know what that does, we're just going to create a function. So we won't be using the remote server anymore. We'll go back to our localhost and begin to create some code that will actually make sense of what we have learned so far. Okay, so come back here and let's delete everything from our index page and begin afresh. Okay, so the first thing we must do is being able to connect to a database. So to connect to our database, let's type in our browser localhost and PHP my admin. So localhost / PHP my admin, and the database interface is going to load. So make sure that MySQL is started. Okay, so in here we want to create a new database. So click new database. Now if you already have an existing database for your project, for your website, you can just create a new table. You don't need a new database altogether. So here I just want to create a database. I'll say band, that would be the name, _db, like that, and create. So just don't put spaces in the DB name, but you can create any name you want. Of course, we need a table, and let's just name it the same thing, but maybe let's see. Band, I don't know. Let me just put table at the end so that we can know which is which that we're talking about here. This is the table, that's the database. So you can give these guys any names, really. So columns there, we need a few columns. The first one is the ID, absolutely required. And from the ID here, if you're really expecting a lot of traffic, maybe you can put big int. But however, int is quite a large number as well, because it can still fit the number of seconds that have passed since 1970 to now. So it's quite a large amount of digits. So we'll leave it at int for now. And then here we're going to put IP like so. So that's our IP address. So you can just put underscore address like so. IP address. And then band will be here. And then count, login underscore count will be there like so. So the way things are going to work is like this. We're going to collect somebody's IP address. And then we'll read in this table to see if there's a record existing of that IP address. If the record does not exist, we just add the record and forget. But if it does exist, we're going to check if this user was banned. So how do we know if they were banned? We're going to add an integer here, some digits here that will represent the time. Okay, so if the time is in the past, then they are not banned. If the time is in the future, then they are banned. Now the reason we're using time instead of just indicating whether they are banned or not is because we want to limit the length of time that they are banned. So we'll put the time in future, and then we're going to check if that time has been reached, then it means they're now no longer banned. But if it's still in the future, then they are still banned until that time has elapsed. Okay, now if they are not banned, we're going to check how many login counts they have. If they have more than the number that we're expecting, then excuse me, then we ban them again. Okay, so let's see how that will work in real life. So on the IP here, we're just going to use variable character because there's no digit big enough to handle that, and also IP addresses don't have numbers only. So let's put that at 45. That's the length. Some IP addresses are quite long, so we want to accommodate those. So 45 characters. You can put 100, that's up to you. So band, we'll leave this at int. This one will be at int as well. That will be at int as well. Okay, great. So now what we ought to do is make sure, let me zoom out here, make sure we select auto increment on ID and primary key. Okay, now there are some of these that we may not add initially. So let's just make sure that we tick no to make sure that we can do without them, but we need the IP address minimum requirement, right? So let's leave those two out. This one is primary key. Great, let's save. Okay, so we have band table. There we go. So since we'll be using the IP address to search for records, let's add an index on IP address. Let's also, I think that's about it. The rest of this will not need to be searched for. We just need to know the IP address. So save that and we are good to go. So we need to be able to save our first record in here. So how we're going to do that is by reading from the database. So we need to make a connection to the database. So we're going to go to ban.php because this is where our function will reside. So in here, I want us to connect to the database, sorry. So I'm just going to create a connection and say con is equal to, and then I'll say MySQL. Now the thing is with IP addresses, there's a lot of, because as you can see, somebody can manipulate the IP address. It's not even just about using a VPN here, like I had shown you. I have another two here, that's the HTTP headers live, like this. So this monitors all the headers that I receive whenever I make a request. So if I click here and refresh the page, like so, you will notice that, where is this? that this has been populated now. So it contains all the headers. If I double click, I can edit these headers and send my own headers if I want to. So I can change anything here from the information that is sent to anything that I want. So you cannot trust the information that comes in from these server and headers situation. Just treat it as hostile data. So in that regard, it's better to use prepared statements. Okay, so I'm just going to use PDO here so that we are better equipped to handle the situation. So new PDO there is how we're going to connect. Now in order to connect in PDO, I usually use a string here. So I'll say string is equal to, I'll say MySQL, because it requires the driver to know what driver we're going to use, and that's MySQL. And then full colon there, and then we're going to say host is equal to, we'll say localhost, that's our host, semicolon, and then now we will tell it the db underscore, no, not underscore, just db name is equal to, and then our db is band, that's the database name, underscore db. Okay, so now that we have that string, we can add it here. Then we put a comma. Here we'll have to put our username, which is root for me, comma, password is just an empty string. So in your case, if you added a user to your database, to your MySQL, that's the username you use here, and the password will be here. If you're using a Mac, you might want to, and you're using MUMP, sorry, you may put root here, because for MUMP, the defaults are root and root password as well. Anyway, so once we connect here, if this fails, so I'm just going to say if, like that. If not, I'll put an exclamation point. If this doesn't work, then we'll do a die with a message, and we'll say could not connect. So the could not connect will only show if we fail to connect. Now, since this is check if band, we can put that on our index page and paste it there like so. That way it will run that file immediately. But then just like we did here, actually, let me just require band.php also. Let's actually do this on our login page. I think that's more appropriate. So back here, refresh. Let's change this to login.php. There we go. Okay, great. Now, once we refresh the page and it has worked like this, it means everything is fine, because we're actually calling the function and things are not falling apart, right? We didn't get this message, so things worked out. So now we just need to read from the database. So we'll create a very simple query here. We'll say query is equal to. Now, before we do the query, we must know the IP address. So I'm going to say IP is equal to, I'll say get underscore IP, get IP, like that. Okay, so that's where the IP will be. So I'll put a function here called get IP so that it doesn't interfere with the other function, like so. And this function will return an IP. Return IP. And to make sure that IP is not empty from the start, we just say IP is equal to an empty string, like so. Okay, great. But how do we get our IP? We already know how to do that. So I'm just going to say IP is equal to underscore server. And then we'll say server. We'll start with this one right here. So I'll copy that and back to login.php. Let me move this closer. No, back to band.php. I'll put that there. So I just want to check here and say, let's put an if statement though. If is set. So if this is set, okay, if that is set, then we'll set the IP to it. So I'll copy this. I'll say return. I'll just return the same thing, because then we are done. If it isn't set, then we are going to use the other one, which is remote like so. Okay, so put that here, return that. Now sometimes you may need to save both of these in different columns depending on the situation, because there are certain times when both are set but one is not giving the correct information. But don't worry too much about that, just get what you can get and we are done. So yeah, I think we are good here. If yes, okay, so that's okay. So for now, what I will do is just echo out the IP. So just echo IP to the screen so that we know if we received the correct thing. So as you can see, this is my localhost IP 127.0.0.1. So it's working. That's good. So the first thing we need to check now is to see if a record exists in the database. So I'm going to create a query and I'll say query is equal to, I'll say select all from the table is called band underscore table. Select all from band table where the IP address, that's the column name, right? Where IP address is equal to, and then here we're going to put a full colon and just say IP like that, because that's a placeholder. And we'll say limit 1 because we just want one record there. Okay. And now what we want to do is prepare the statement. So I'm just going to say stm like that for statement is equal to, and I'll use the connection and say prepare. And I will put my query inside that preparation like so. So that will prepare our query for reading. So the reason this is safer is because I'm not putting the IP address in here, I'm putting a placeholder. So SQL injection is virtually 0 at this point. So I'm going to say if, because I want to know if the result worked, if statement like so. So if the statement is okay, let's do a check to see if things will run fine. So check is equal to statement execute. And then here I want to put an array that contains the placeholder for the IP. So if you had put several variables in here, because you can say where IP is equal to this and that is equal to that and so on, you would need several placeholders. You would put them in the array as well. So to create an array, you just put brackets like so, and then put your keys and your values. So in my case, my key should match the key that I want to represent that value. So in this case, it's IP, so I'll put IP, and then I'll put that fat arrow and give the actual variable, which is IP as well, which is this one right there. So that's an array. Now, if you had multiple items, you just put a comma and then repeat this process like this, copy and paste. Or if you want to make it look better, you can do this like so. Okay, that's much better. So IP. So now I can remove this. Just don't forget the commas between them. And now PHP allows you to leave a comma on one item like this. So hey, why not? We'll leave it there. So if check works out, so I'll do another if check. Okay. So if check like that, what we will do is we'll say we want to read the row. So I'm just going to say the row is equal to statement fetch all, and I want to fetch an array which is an associative array. So I'll say PDO double colon and say fetch underscore assoc for associative array. You can say fetch obj for objects. So once I get that, this array could either be empty or it could be full. So I just want to know if row like that, and let's just say if is array, if it's an array, and at the same time the count of items in the array is greater than 0. Let's do that. So when that is true, then it means we have actually accessed something valuable in there. So copy that and paste it here, but row is equal to row 0. I want to get just the first result. Okay, so finally we have the row of information. Now if we don't have that row of information, we will get to it somewhere here at this point. So if here we get to this point, it means none of this was successful. So we'll just include a new record instead. Okay, so in this case, what we will do is create another query like that. So say query is equal to, and I'm going to say insert into band table. Okay, then the values like that. Okay, so the columns that I want to insert here and their corresponding values. So the ID is inserted automatically. So what we need is the IP address. And then we also need, let me come back here for a second to the table so that you see what I'm talking about. So in this table, we have IP address, we have band, we have login count. So far, if we're inserting a new record, then the login count should be 0. And then the band should be, let's put that at 0 as well. So here I will say login count is equal to 0. And then let's say band is equal to 0 as well. So we have that. So let's say login count, comma, band. So make sure those names correspond to actual columns here. Then I'm just going to copy these babies and put them on the other side. So I'll put that here so we can see it much better. And then just like on the other side, I will put full columns there because I want to use these as placeholders. So as a consequence, let's see here. I will do the same thing that I did here, but since I'm just inserting, I don't need to check if anything or any of this actually worked. I just need this line by itself because I don't need to retrieve any information. I just want it to run. So prepare and then execute these two. Okay, execute, yes, copy that, paste it here. Okay, so to execute here, I'm going to need IP address, which is IP, what did I name it here? IP address, that's what I named it. So that's what I need to use as the key. But it's the IP, no problem. So I'll duplicate this 3 times. Use this one as band, so say band. That will correspond to the actual band variable, and then finally login count, and will correspond to the actual variable login count, like that. Okay, so prepared statement, insert into, and then boom. Okay, pretty good. So if the record already exists, let's see what will happen now. What will happen now is that if I leave it like this, every time it will add a new record here. Okay, to add a new record, but I just want it to add once. So in order to prevent it to getting here every time, it means once I find a record here, I must do a return and say return. Right now I don't want it to return anything. It will just return no, or no value whatsoever. So returning here means a record was found and then it will never get here because return will exit the function. So the first time it will get here, the second time it will exit. Okay, so if this is working, we should have one record at least. So refresh the page. Let's go to our table, click browse, and we do indeed have one record. So one ID there, everything is cool. If I refresh the page, come back, I shouldn't find a second record. Okay, so things are working fine. So now we want to do some tests to see if the user was banned or not. So right here, before we return here, we must check. So first thing is first, we must check the current time. So I'm just going to say time is equal to time. Now time is the number of seconds since 1970 up to now. So that number is increased every second. So it keeps growing, right? And then what I need to check first is to see if the user is currently banned. Okay. So if this is a login, we should know that this is a login attempt. So here we'll put a variable, say login attempt, like that. Here it's going to be equal to false, like that. Okay. But if we are doing an actual login, we'll set this to true. That way we know this is a login attempt, and once it's an attempt, we should increment. Okay, so copy that for later. So this is the current time now. We should know whether the user is banned or not. So let's check it out. So to do that, we're going to get the row, whatever information we got there. Let me actually copy this before we return, and let me just print readable to show you that it's returning the actual data from the database. So let's just print that data here. So I'm going to refresh here. Sorry about that, refresh. Okay, so you see that this is the data from the database, one record here. So it's an array with ID, IP address, band, etc. So we can utilize that data. So here we'll do a simple check. So I'm going to say if row, like that, band, right, that band thing. If the band number or the time currently is, if band is greater than time, if it's greater than time, like so. So if it's greater than time, then this user is banned. So at this point, what we will do is we will echo something, or access denied. We'll just say header, like that. So we'll say header location. This is how we redirect a user, and we take them to the band.php page, like so. And then here, make sure you put die, like so, so the script can exit from there. Okay. Or yeah, actually we just put die there, so everything will stop. So if that is true, banned. Else, if it's not true, else means they are not banned. We're going to check if this is a login attempt. Okay, so if this is a login attempt, so we're going to copy this and say if login attempt, which means if it's true, like that. You don't need to say is equal to true. Just by putting that, it will check for true or false, etc. If you're checking for false, you have to specify if it's equal to false, like that. But we are checking for true, so we'll leave it there. Actually, checking for false, you can just say not, like that. Okay, so if this is a login attempt, then what we need to do is insert or edit the current record. Okay, so I'm going to create a query. We're going to do exactly what we did here, almost exactly, and do the execution. So I'm going to copy this and paste it there. Oops, too much. So let me just move it a bit. Okay, so instead of insert, we're going to update. So we say update band table. And then how you update is you say set, and then you tell it what column you want to set. So if this is a login attempt, we want to increase the count. So we're going to say set login attempt is equal to login, wait, it's login count, sorry. That's the name of the column, login count. So set login count is equal to login count plus 1, whatever the number is at that time, login count plus 1. Okay, and then once login count plus 1, and then we say where, we have to tell it where to do this. So make sure you put a space there, where ID is equal to, and then we'll put an ID there, like so. Okay, so let me move this back a bit, and let's just say limit 1, just so it can exit after doing one execution. So here all we want is the ID. This is the only variable we've supplied. So let me just put ID here. Now we're going to get the ID from the row itself. So row, copy, and I'll put that here. Row ID, ID, like that. Okay. The rest of these guys are not required because we are not updating those guys. So this is the one we're updating. So we're going to increment and tell it, okay, this is a login attempt. Now, you should only say login attempt if it didn't go well on your login site, if the stuff was rejected. If it wasn't, then login count should be different. Or maybe, wait a minute here. Okay, that is okay here. I think we are good to go. So let's put a limit here as well. So we're going to say limit. This is the number of limits we're going to say is equal to 3, like that. So once we hit that number, then our limits have gone above what we need, and then we'll have to ban the user. So right here on else, we're going to do again and say if we check in the row. So if limit, if row, copy that, if row login count is greater than limit. So login underscore count is greater or equal to the limit, then we must do something else. So here, once we get to this point, we'll return. But then before we return, we're going to update using this query. I'll copy that again, paste it here, like so. So at this point, the user has been banned. So update a banned table, set, instead of login count, we're going to say banned, okay, is equal to, and then we'll put a variable called banned, like that, where ID is equal to ID. So we do need the same ID from the row, but we'll need a second parameter called banned, and this one will be set to a very specific time. So here we'll use time, right? We'll say time, maybe let's not put this here. I'm going to say time like so. Where did I actually set the time here? I had set it before. Okay, so time is equal to that. Okay, so what we want now is to set a value in the future. So what is that value? I'm going to say this is equal to time. This is the expiry date. So I'm just going to call it expire, like so, is equal to time, which is the current time, multiply that by 60, like so. So actually, sorry about that, plus 60, like that. Okay. So once I add 60, that's 1 minute. So if I can multiply that by 3, that's 3 minutes. If I multiply by 30, that's 30 minutes. So you can ban somebody for that period of time. Let's just try for 1 minute, like so. Okay, so that's the expiry date. So if I copy this, put it here, then I will ban the person for 1 minute, like here. Okay, whatever minutes are decided here. And then the return will make sure that we exit the function without doing any more damage. So if the login attempt, so first thing we check to see if we are banned already. If we are banned, we redirect the page. If we are not banned, we're going to check if the login count is greater than a certain number. Now, we should know that this is a login attempt or not. So this should actually move above here, like that. Actually, wait a minute. Yeah, because we are not, if we are not banned, we should ignore all of this. So let me move this in here. So this user is not banned when they get here. So if they're not banned, we have to check if this is actually a login attempt. If it is, then we check if the login count was exceeded, and then we ban them. So once we ban them, we can return, and they will be banned. And then the next time they try to load the page, they will end up here, right here. Okay. Now, if this doesn't work, and actually once we ban the user right here, once we ban the user, we should also reset the count. So let's do that here. Login count should be equal to 0. Login count equal to 0. Okay, so set that, and then here we'll put a comma and say login count is equal to login count. Actually, we could just put 0 there, space, so we don't need to put it here. There we go. That's because we are adding an actual variable over here. All right, let's save that. But then we don't want to, so long it's a login attempt, we just don't want to increase the count every time. We need another if statement here to check. So let me just copy this. We'll use a different variable though. Paste that and move it over one step, and then let's close this if statement there. So instead of login attempt, it's going to be login success, maybe login success. We're going to call this one false as well to start with. So login success, copy that, and let's put it here. All right, so if not, so let's put a exclamation point there. Okay, so if not successful, then we are going to add the count as well. If this is a login attempt, we'll come in here and check if the limit has been reached. If so, then we ban the user, reset the count number, and wait, login count. Okay, so here we can even do a, wait a minute, not login success. There we go. Wait a minute, because here if the count is great, then we zero it out. And let's see here, at this point we will, maybe we need an else because we don't want both of these to run at the same time. So if we check the count is great, then we ban the user. If it isn't, we check if it's successful, and then we do this instead. So I will just put an else like so there, then it will be else if, like that. Okay, so hopefully this will work, but we need to be able to use these login attempts. For now, since the login attempt is false, we will not get to this at all. It will just check if we are banned or not. So what this means is that when you are checking to see if a user is banned or not, you just use it like this. However, if it's on the login page, when you've tried to log in, you have to add those extra parameters here. So on every other page, this is okay. So for example, the index page, we can simply put this there, like so. I need to check if we are banned or not, like that. Okay, good. So let's go back to the login page. Where is this? Let me close this empty page here. All right, so at this point, I want us to see, let's go and try it actually here before we go any further. Let me refresh the page. So as you can see, nothing serious here. If we go to our page and the database and browse, we see that everything is just usual. But let's do testing to see if the login is successful or not. So in order to do that, we need at least a users table. So let me create a users table here. I'm just going to say users, and here we'll need an ID. We want something very simple. Let's try email and password, like so. Just basic items. So variable character, let's put 100, password as well 255. And then I want to make sure that auto increment of the ID, primary key, and that should do it actually. So let's save. Okay, so let's add a record at least, but before that let's add an index here for the email, and let's check the password as well. So I'll put a very basic login system. Do not use this login system if you want to learn how to log in and sign up. I have tutorials for that. I'll link them in the description. So let's go to the browse, and actually let's go to insert so we can add at least one record. So I'm just going to say email@email.com, and password is password. Just very simple generic stuff. Okay, so if we go to browse, we have that record here and there as well. Okay, so now we can do an attempt of logging in. So I'm going to go back here and add some code. So the first thing I will add is an if statement to know whether something was posted or not. So I'm just going to say if count, just a simple check here, count post is greater than 0. So if we have something that was posted, then let's do the following. So if I go back to bun.php, I already have the connection situation here. So I'm going to copy this part right there. In fact, I will copy all this up to here. Where is this? Up to there. Actually, let me copy all of this up to, I think up to here where there is row, like that. Oops. Copy, and let's come back to the login page and paste all that. So then I will tab it inside like so. So we will do the connection string here, and then we'll do a query, but this is definitely not the query. Let me remove the IP, we don't need that. Execute, this is fine. We're just going to change what we have here, and then we'll check here to see if things went well. If they did, we'll be in here. So let's make sure all two statements are closed. So let's start with that one, close that one, and close that one as well. So now that I have that closed, we should have all the if statements closed. Okay, so here we'll say select all from users. Let's change that, where email is equal to, we're going to put one email, and password is equal to password, like that. We'll leave the limit 1 there, that's okay. So if this is true and we get a result from this, it means we if that check there, if we get to this point, it means everything went well. So I'll put success, and anything apart from this should be considered failure. Okay, so success is here, we're going to redirect at that point. But if we do get to, let's say, the end of this at here, that's failure, like so. Failure. I hope that's the spelling for failure. Anyway, so this is simple sign up login system. So let me just echo this out so that you can see here. I'll say success here, And once I say success, I should tell it to die at this point, and then here echo failed, so that we can see that the login system is indeed working. Okay, so we need to get the email and password into the execute here. So I'm just going to change this to email like that. Then I will duplicate that and change the second one to password. Okay. And I need to get these variables as well. So actually what I can do is just get them directly from the post variable. So I'm just going to say post like that. Okay. And then close that like so. Okay. So that should do just fine. So let's give it a test run for our login. And I will zoom in here and let's say email@email.com. And then I'm just going to type a random password. So login failed. Okay, great. Then let's try email again, and let's add the correct password and login success. Okay, so it's working. Now let's add the correct banning mechanisms. So I'm just going to get check if banned here. Now instead of this success here, I'm just going to redirect the user. I'm going to say header like this, location. I will say index.php. Save that. Okay, let's go to the index page, and we need to be able to know this is the index page. So I'm just going to try and add some HTML, put home there, and then I will put an h1 tag and say home. Okay, great. So hopefully that should work fine. Okay, great. So at this point, I want to test a few times for the failed. Oh, before I do that, let me go back to the login and let's copy this. So if we get to this point, then we have failed. Yes, yes. So echo failed, but now if we go back to our ban.php, we have to know this is the login attempt. Is it a login attempt? And we're going to put true over here, comma, and then the question is, did it succeed? No, it didn't. Okay, so we can leave this as false because that's the default value here. So we don't need to add it, but you can add it, no problem, like this. That's okay. And then here we have success. So the question is, was it a login attempt? Yes. Did we fail? No. So at this point, I will go back to true here, like so. So let's see if things are actually working as planned. So I will refresh here, resend. So now it has failed. So let's see if we have entered any values in the browse, in the banned table, shall we? So you see login attempt is equal to 1 there. Okay, that's good. Let's try again. Second login attempt, which has failed. You see a 2 there. That's good. Let's try a third login attempt. And what do you see? 3. Okay. So now if we try again a third login attempt, we can do that just by typing there. And if I press login, now I should be banned here at this point. So that's 0 and I am banned. So you see, this is the time length of my banning. So let me try and refresh the page here. Oops, I went to the wrong page. Okay, so it's sending me to banned.php, but it's saying the page isn't found. So let me check here too. Oh, it's actually denied. Sorry about that. Let's go to ban here and let's change that to denied. I keep missing that one there, so back to that function. Good. So if I refresh now, I'm at let me go back, let me refresh the page. Access denied, access denied. Let me try again to go to the other page. Send, access denied. So since it's 1 minute, I have to wait for 1 minute, which is right here. It's time plus 60 times 1, which is just 60, so it's 1 minute. It should allow me access after a minute. So let me try the index page as well. Okay, so I'm back to the index page. It means I've been allowed access. Let's go back to the login and access is back. So let's try again to make sure we are banned. So failed attempt. So let's go back to the table to see what's happening. Browse. So now I have one login attempt. Okay, let's try again. Login second, login third. So I should have a 3 here. That's true. And let me try one more time. Login failed. So back here it's 0, but then I have been banned again. So this time if I try to refresh the page or try to log in again, access denied. So you can write your own message here. Please try again after an hour or whatever the time is you've given. For us, we've given 1 minute. So let me try and access the index page at this point. And I still get back to access denied. Whichever page I try to access at this point, I am effectively banned. So for as long as you add this code right here on any page that you want to ban the user, that would work. This is why when you have that MVC system where only the index page is the page that is being accessed, no matter what the user types in the URL, they're simply redirected to the index page. That's always better because you just need to put this code in that single file. So then the entire website is banned to that user. But if you don't have that system, it's okay. You can just copy this code, make sure the ban is in the same folder, or you can specify your folder here depending on where you've put this file, and then you can just put the check if banned function there. So I think a minute has passed. Let's see if we are being allowed to log in again. Okay, so we are being allowed now. So let's try and actually log in properly. So I'll do password here. Let me try maybe just one more attempt. Failed, so that I add one item here. Let's see, let me refresh. Okay, one login attempt. Now let's get it right. So email, and then let's do password like so. Correct, and submit. So now we're on the home page, but let's see what happens to the table. Okay, so as you can see now, there's one login attempt, which is not good, even though we are not banned here. This is not good. We have to reset this when you get it right. Okay, so let me go to my ban.php here. Let's see what we can do about that. So in the case where we succeed, it will be a login attempt, right? We are not banned yet, so it will be a login attempt, but we must check if login was successful or it was a failure. So if it was a success, then we must do this, but without the banning. We just want to reset the login count. Okay, so we can do a very simple check here. So let me remove the not here because I want to put an else statement here. So say else like that. So keep in mind this will still occur when this is failed, because I've just made it such that if it's successful, it will go here. If it's not, it will still go there. So I will get the query string, prepare the statement, and use the check like so, no problem. Paste that like that. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is to get update banned table set login count is equal to, so I'll leave the ID there because that's the ID still I want to use. Set login count is equal to 0, just like that. So here we are resetting. So you can put your comments here. Reset, let's say reset login count on success. Add to login count on failure. Failure. I hope that's failure. Can't shake the feeling that I'm spelling that wrong for some reason. Okay, so add to login count on failure, reset the login count on success. Great. And then here if banned, so we can just say if banned. Okay, great. So I think that should work. So let's give it another try. So back here, let's go back to the login page. Okay, so here from last time we still have login count 1. So let's try a few times of failure. So that's the third one. We should have a 3 here. Oh, actually it went overboard. It went to 0. We've been banned. That's not what I intended to do. So let me just remove this, put it to 0 so that we are not banned anymore. Great. So let's try a couple of times. 1, 2, and then back here I should see a 2. Good. I want to see this one go to 0 once I log in successfully. So I'm going to go email, and then I will put password here, like so, the correct thing, and click login, and I'm back home, which means I have logged in. But then let's check this to see that it has gone to 0. And as you can see, it has correctly gone to 0. Alrighty then. So hopefully this has helped you to understand something, and I will just go through it real quick in case you missed something. So what we're doing here is creating a single function to check for us if the user has been banned or not. And we are using these login attempts because we want to also give them a count. So here you can increase the count for how many you consider to be a limit. You can put this at 10, you can put it at 20, that's up to you. And so we make a database connection. We get the IP using the other function that's down here. Once we get that IP address, we can save, check in the database if a record already exists, right? So if the record doesn't exist, we're going to go down here, because if it doesn't exist, we'll exit this if function and we'll get to this point. So we're going to have to insert a new record. And if the record exists, we're going to go in here instead, up to this point, up to that point rather. And so we get the current time, and then we check to see if banned, we are actually banned. So we are checking to see if the given time, the given period for the ban has elapsed. If it still hasn't elapsed, then we tell the user that the access is revoked. If it did pass, we have to check if this is a login attempt. So if we are trying to log in, then we come down here. Okay, and then we check if our count, how many times we've already tried to log in. If we've exceeded the limit, then we are effectively banned. However, if we haven't exceeded the limit, we'll check, okay, is this a successful login or not? If it's successful, we'll reset the count and forget about it. However, if it isn't successful, we'll add to the login count. So hopefully that's easy peasy to follow along. And so now what we all need to do is just make sure that the function here exists wherever we want to make sure the user is banned or not. And make sure you require the correct file as well, which has this function in it. Okay, so hopefully you've learned something new, and I will see you in another video.